Welcome back to the Sitrep podcast. I am your host, Oriskany Jim, and we are back today to resolve some more unfinished business. Namely, our 20mm game, Approximating the Battle of Hubbardton, fought during the American Revolution, 7 July 1777, in what is today Vermont. Now there is a part 1 to this video, link is in the description below, if you're interested in all the campaign background material that we reviewed for the Battle of Hubbardton. We talked very briefly about how there was a Northern Crown Army under the command of General Johnny Burgoyne invading upstate New York out of a base in Canada. His object was to divide New England off from the rest of the American colonies by way of Lake Champlain and the Hudson River, and how his first big obstacle in this campaign was Fort Ticonderoga. We talked about how he managed to crowbar the Americans under the command of Arthur Sinclair out of Fort Ticonderoga by way of elevated terrain and the threat of artillery, and how these Americans, as they tried to withdraw, came under attack by elements of Burgoyne's advance corps under the command of Brigadier General Simon Fraser. So this rearguard action fought by American Patriots versus the advance guard under Brigadier General Simon Fraser kicks off what history remembers as the Battle of Hubbardton. Basically a big delaying action. So again, all this material is in part 1 if you care to review it. Also part 1 of this game if you want to see how we got to this point. Suffice it to say, so far the Patriot forces, played by myself, are in kind of a bad way. I have managed to completely destroy the Hessian Jaegers and most of the Native American scouts that were coming at me. However, heavier Crown units, especially their artillery, has pretty much shattered my center. That was the 2nd New Hampshire under Colonel Nathan Hale. Now the good news is, although I've lost my center, I am holding on the American right, and I'm actually advancing on the American left. And I just might be able to rally and reposition what remains of my Continental Riflemen and suppress some of those British artillery crews. This was a tactic used to great success throughout the Northern/New York/Saratoga campaign of 1777. Am I going to be able to do it here on the table? Not really sure. I should also note that the system we're using is sort of a bastardized kit-based version of, now don't laugh at me, we go over this in the previous video, TSR's Battle System 2nd Edition, originally written for, believe it or not, mass combat for Advanced Dungeons & Dragons. I know that sounds like a weird fit, but believe it or not, it actually works. We've gone over it several times in the past. You can check out those videos on our channel if you're interested. I should also note that this is an approximation of the Battle of Hubbardton. There were no Native Americans engaged here to my knowledge. Hessian Grenadiers were here, but not actually engaged. There was definitely no British artillery in this battle, and there were no Patriot riflemen in this battle. But again, these were different kinds of units that we thought would bring extra flavor to the game, and we wanted to try them out here at the club in this battle. This is also the first time we are trying this pretty drastic modification of the combat system of TSR Battle System 2nd Edition, so this is kind of a big playtest as well as an actual wargame. But enough of all that, let's go ahead and get to the battlefield and see if Oriskany Jim can salvage this situation. Liberty or death, maybe? Do we really have to consider the second option? It might be the second option. Let's check it out and see if I can save it. Oh no! The British 6-pounders are going to open fire again and take another shot, this time at the Green Mountain Boys. The chance he needs to roll now is a 6 or better. He does score 2 hits, so that's going to be 2 figures removed from the Green Mountain Boys. Alright, so that's going to trigger actually 2 more morale checks. One just for being under artillery fire, and one for now reaching 50% of that regiment's original strength. They started off with 12 figures, they're now down to 6 figures. They just hit exactly 50%, so that's going to be the second morale check. I make the first one, and now the second one is... I think I missed that one. Let me check. Right, so solid Continental Militia start off with a 10. They have Seth Warner nearby that gives them an 11, but they rolled a 12, so yeah, they're shaking. Alright, that's not good news. They'll move back 4 inches in just a second. Let me quickly resolve this over here. Ebenezer Francis has advanced with the 11 Massachusetts. I'm now taking cover in those woods. I'm shooting across the brook into that light infantry. They fired at me and passed through fire and missed. So now we're actually in the missile combat phase. We're going to shoot at each other simultaneously. Now he has to take one off for his fence and one off for those woods. I have to take one off for the fence only because I'm in the trees using them as cover. Okay, so I'm going to fire my 12 dice at him. He's going to fire, looks like, about 7 dice back at me. And yeah, it didn't go very well. Let's just put it that way.
These rustics are so inept.
Even though I had some fire superiority there, I lost 3 figures, he only lost 1, and I wound up being shaken as well. So I had to retreat 4 inches back through the forest and take a shaken counter onto my unit. So that happened. There are our godless lobsterbacks making evil plans about what they're going to do with their godless Hessian mercenaries.
Thousands of godless Hessian mercenaries among them!
And yeah, it's again not looking so hot for the Americans here. My big push on the American left, which I hope was going to restore the situation, maybe cave in the British wing, has not gone well. That was sort of my Hail Mary pass there around the left, near that barn you see at the upper left of your screen, and it didn't work. The other half of the Green Mountain Boys are still in that farm field. They're doing pretty well so far, although no one's really attacked them so far. Meanwhile, I extended the Green Mountain Boys into the center to make up where the 2nd New Hampshire used to be, and now they're the ones getting pounded by artillery. I have managed to rally my American riflemen from routed to shaken, so if I can rally them again, I'll be able to advance and hopefully put those British artillery pieces under rifle fire, maybe get them suppressed a little bit. Okay, so my Continental Riflemen are now rallied. We have advanced, and it is time for, hopefully, to put some rifle fire, long-range rifle fire on the British artillery crews. It's the only counter I have to British artillery. Again, there was really no British artillery at the Battle of Hubbardton. There wasn't a whole lot of American artillery in the New York campaign in general. And what would usually happen is they would try to use their riflemen, usually under the command of Daniel Morgan, protected by a battalion of light infantry under Henry Dearborn, to snipe the British artillery crews. In those days, especially on battlefields this small, where you would have tiny little farm fields of this far north, usually corn or wheat. Further south, you'd have a lot of tobacco and cotton, and you would, maybe be able to get your riflemen close enough to hit a British artillery crew. So that's kind of what I'm hoping for here. Meanwhile, those Hessian Grenadiers...
You will not defeat Hessians. They are European soldiers.
Which historically were in the area, they just never engaged, are crossing the brook. We have 24th Regiment of Foot, minus their flank companies, now moving forward also across the brook. By the way, I'm pretty sure that's the same 24th of Foot that would later fight at Rorke's Drift. I'm not entirely sure of the legacy there, but I do know that there is some kind of connection. Sometimes it's kind of confusing because you have British regiments combining and dividing and stuff like that through the decades and centuries. So don't take that to court, but I'm pretty sure that there is a connection there. Meanwhile, it's the Corps Light Infantry. These are the light infantry companies stripped out of all of the regiments in Simon Fraser's Advanced Corps. And same with their grenadiers, into these little grenadier and light infantry battalions put together for a special purpose. So again, if there's anything kind of wrong with this game, it's so far, again, this is our first time with this system, or with this kit bash sort of house rules version of this system, is that the firearms are a little too powerful. Notice the British Grenadiers and the Hessian Grenadiers are nowhere close to the Patriots, and there's probably not going to be a chance for a good bayonet charge. Okay guys, if it's ever going to happen, it's going to happen now. The remains of my Continental Riflemen, there's only 3 figures left. They did have 6, but they're down to 50% losses. They have rallied, however, from routed to shaken, and then from shaken to good order. They've now advanced, and they are in range of those British artillery crews. I am also in tree cover. I am also behind a fence. So normally I would get to shoot now, but again, unfortunately I have to obviously move during my movement phase. And during my movement phase, the British get something called pass-through fire, is what TSR battle system called. It's basically a version of opportunity fire. It's opportunity fire under a different name. So, long story short, take your first shot. I basically just have to survive his artillery's pass-through fire. I tried to hedge to the left as much as I could to get out of his 45-degree arc. There's a 45-degree arc allowed for unit frontage in TSR battle system. I couldn't quite do it. I'm making the best use of my terrain. He also takes a penalty for my open order. Basically, he has to roll a 7 or better on D10s. He gets 4 dice, 2 for each gun. He's got 2 guns. So 4 dice, 7 plus on D10s. And wouldn't you know it, he scored all 3 successes.
You serious?
So there it goes. My Continental Rifleman nearly got it done.
Nearly.
And I'm pretty sure the Patriots are going to lose this game. My 2 big Hail Mary saves, 11th Massachusetts over there on the right, on the left, and my Patriot Rifleman nearly pulled it off, but just didn't work. So now that my 2 Hail Mary bids to sort of stabilize this game have both failed, we have officially entered the massacre phase of the game.
You can't face defeat, and so you seek annihilation.
Things are going to go downhill very fast for the Patriots. Right, so the 11th Massachusetts, they did rally, but unfortunately that was their movement phase. So they didn't get a chance to sort of pivot or refuse the line or anything like that, present some kind of frontage. As Mark moved his battalion of light infantry, he swung it down, put it on that high ground, and guys, it never gets more obvious than this. That is clearly a flank shot at medium range. He's going to get to fire all 6 of those figures right into the right wing of Ebenezer Francis's 11th Massachusetts. That's going to be an ugly fire phase, I promise you. I'm only going to get to fire my extreme right wing units back, so yeah, it's not going to go well. Now again, there's really no such thing as a light infantry battalion officially. These are all of the light infantry companies stripped out of the rest of the regiments in the advanced corps into the special task force. Let's see what happens. Alright, so the fire phase has now been resolved. You see where 11th Massachusetts has lost about not quite 50% of its forces in a single fire phase. And I have managed to clip a little bit off of that light infantry battalion. So I did knock off 2 of those figures, but obviously I took a lot more. So he gets +1 because he's light infantry. They're just better troops. He gets +1 because he's firing off of high ground. He gets +1 for firing on the flank. He gets to fire all of his units. He did not quite do 4 or more figures in a single step, so he does not trigger that extra morale check. But that's okay. Oh, he did do 4 or more figures. Okay, so I am going to have to take that extra morale check. Sorry about that. So, yeah, I'm 50%, and I have taken 4 more losses in the single step. So, yeah, that's not good. I'm going to have to make a whole bunch of morale checks. In battle system, or once you reach 50% of your losses, you have to start making morale checks for every single unit you lost. I catastrophically failed it. If you fluff a morale roll by more than 7, they are automatically routed. They're right next to the edge of the table. Long story short, take your second shot. That's the end of the 11th Massachusetts in basically 1 fire phase. That was some good die rolling on Mark's part and also some solid tactics. Anytime you can put musket fire at medium or maybe even close range straight into an enemy's flank, that's some good black powder linear warfare. So well done to Mark for that move. Well guys, here we are. It's the beginning of turn 6, and this is where we're going to call it. Both Continental regiments, the 11th Massachusetts and 2nd New Hampshire, have been broken and routed off the field. Quick historical footnote, this rear guard action at Hubbardton also included elements of 1st and 3rd New Hampshire. No worries, we had the right number of figures on the board. It's just there were elements of these other regiments sort of mixed in with partial elements of 2nd New Hampshire and 11th Massachusetts, so no worries. So, long story short, take your third shot. The only thing that's left is Seth Warner's regiment of Green Mountain Boys. But even one of their battalions, seen here at the very bottom of your screen, they're well below, well, they're right at 50% of their strength, I should say. The other battalion of this regiment hasn't even engaged yet, but there's no way they are going to stand any kind of a chance at stopping everything that the Crown has coming down that military road that leads from Fort Ticonderoga down towards Hubbardton. So yeah, we're going to go ahead and call it here. The secret sauce of battle system and kind of the reason this game turned out the way it did is the morale ratings. Clearly you see where all the Crown ratings at the top of the page there are well above the Continental ratings near the bottom of the page. And this is what we saw in history time and time again, especially with Patriot militia. They usually were local militia or state militia. They weren't even officially enlisted into the Continental Army. They didn't have the best leadership. They had next to zero training. They basically knew how to shoot their squirrel guns, and that's about it. Well, unfortunately for them, war is not a first-person shooter. You need a lot more to be a good soldier, and especially a good cohesive military unit, than to know how to shoot. And the so-called Minutemen, who have this revered place in the annals of American history, I honestly don't know why. It does not bear up to good scrutiny. Now, there were some militia units that were pretty good, and then there were some militia units that actually became sort of continental militia that would actually do a little bit better. But suffice it to say that the Patriot cause and the Continental Army stood no chance against pretty much any kind of Crown force until the Continental Congress finally started to listen to Washington and say, look, you need a regular force to be able to stand up to the British, and as Washington said, look them in the face. Meanwhile, I didn't even see this happening during the game. I got so fixated on the fate of 11th Massachusetts. Iroquois warriors, who were, by the rules of the game as skirmishers, not allowed to move into frontal base-to-base contact with Seth Warner's militia, who were now in closed order. So they started to outflank Seth Warner's Green Mountain Boys instead, hiding behind that barn. So we're going to say, just for fun, that this house here is the McCrae house, and Jenny McCrae, who was historically taken by the Iroquois and scalped, and her sad remains presented to Johnny Burgoyne. This incident would historically galvanize the upstate New York region against the British and actually turned into a propaganda disaster for the British. But here we're going to say that we saved Jenny McCrae. We grabbed her out of her house, threw her over our shoulder, and fled off the table. So, hey, it's now a Patriot victory. Sorry, Mark and Ron, you guys lost the battle because you didn't manage to kill Jenny McCrae. Just kidding. She was actually a member of a staunchly loyalist family, so let's face it, we wouldn't have saved her. But in all seriousness, that's where we left the game. There's a little bit of adjustments I want to make. I think firearms are a little too punchy. Notice we never got anywhere close to a bayonet charge, but all in all, I'm pretty happy with the result. Well, folks, there you have it. Turns out I wasn't really able to save this game after all. That's okay, I'm still happy with the way this game shook out. That's just how the dice hit the table. I was up against two really good opponents, Mark and Ron. Congratulations on a great victory. And also, this is kind of how the Battle of Hubbardton turned out in real life. Again, this was a delaying action. This was pretty much just punch the British in the face, make them deploy, and then get the hell out of there long enough for the rest of the remnants of the Ticonderoga garrison to get the hell out of there and rejoin Philip Schuyler's Continental Army of the North. Again, I should also note that big units that were in the British force weren't there historically. There was no artillery, no Native Americans. These were some of the strongest units that we saw on the British table. Then again, there were really no Patriot riflemen in the battle. So again, guys, this was more of an approximation of the Battle of Hubbardton, really half of a playtest as well, of a new kit bash house rules mix of the original TSR battle system game rules. But that's where we're going to leave it for today, folks. I hope you guys like this material. Please remember to like, comment, and subscribe if you haven't already. Help us get the word out and help our channel grow. In the meantime, we are rounds complete. I am Risky Jim with the Sitrep podcast. And remember, liberty or death.